Us try this again. Come on. Come on, stream. Come on. Hello, hello. Okay. We should be good. Okay. So actually, we're gonna play Choice of Broadsides, which is another story-based game. This one is about pirates. Last time we played one about dragons. So this is how we start off. We don't have a name yet. We are a midshipman, 0 years of experience. We're 19 years old, and all of our stats are at 50%. Okay, so then this is how the story starts. Fire the starboard broadside, shouts the captain. Cannons roar as HMS Courageous attacks the enemy frigate. As one of the junior officers, really more of an officer in training, you command 3 guns on the Courageous's main gun deck. The guns of the battery next to yours fire, leaping back against the heavy ropes that prevent them from smashing across the ship. Clouds of white smoke below as you about you as you give your gun crew the commands to ready your battery's cannons. Swab, powder, wadding, shot. Run out the guns, the captain yells out. Fire as the guns bear. You give your gun crews orders to load and fire as quickly as they can without waiting for the rest of the broadside. They swab out the board, push in a charge of powder, push wadding down on the powder, load the shot, push the gun out through the gun port, and fire the cannon, with you commanding each step of the process. Swab, powder, wadding, shot, fire. Swab, powder, wadding, shot, fire. The world turns upside down as the enemy's broadside rips through the hull some 10 feet away. As the enemy cannonball tears through the side of the ship, giant splinters of wood fly through the air. One of the splinters, perhaps a yard long, rips through the stomach of Davies, a sailor under your command. A fragment of a cannonball smashes Fisher's arm, mangling it horribly. Your sailor seems stunned by the carnage, standing in shock, while Davies and Fisher scream in agony. What do? Attend to the wounded personally, give some orders. Davies is done for, but Fisher can be saved. Duty to the ship outweighs the sailors. Let's go with this one. Jones, you shout, and a master's mate under your command looks at you expectantly. Take a team of sailors and get Fisher to the surgeon. And Davies? Asked Jones. No, Davies is good as dead. Take Fisher now. Jones swallows hard, clearly troubled, but obeys your command. Your gun crew leaps into action and carries Fisher's away. Davies continues to scream for most of the rest of the battle before finally slumping into unconsciousness, but you do your best to put them out of your mind and focus on the battle. We should take a moment here to embellish a few facts about you. In this game, you take the role of a young officer in the Royal Navy of Albion, an imaginary nation rather like England, fighting battles at sea with Gaul in the time of Napoleonic Wars. But you're not just any young officer. Nobody knows it yet, but you're going to be one of the most famous officers in all of Albion. The Naval Chronicle will publish stories about you. Sailors will tell tall tales of your adventures. One day, if you're lucky, people will write histories about you. Why? What makes you so notable? Skill in sailing ships, combat ability, leadership, or high birth? I'm going to say leadership. An officer's most important duty is maintaining discipline and keeping the crew inspired, even in the face of death and destruction. Your leadership will serve you well. What's your second most notable quality as an officer? Let's say combat. As an officer, you're first and foremost a warrior defending Albion with your skill in battle. That tells us what you're good at, but you can't be perfect. What's your greatest weakness? Yeah, we'll do that one. You will always have to be twice as able as your fellow officers to receive the same opportunities and respect they habitually get. Do you lead by knowing the correct action or by reading people around you? Do you sail based on knowledge of technique and experience or through an able reliance on your sailors? In short, would you say that you are characterized more by your intelligence or by your ability to make people like you? I'm going to say mostly intelligence. Remember, you'll do better as an officer if you avoid situations that strain your weaknesses and pursue strategies that play to your strengths. This game is set in a fictional world similar to our own, but with some differences. For example, perhaps the ships are crewed by women. You are a young and gallant officer, but are you a young gentleman or a young lady? I'm going to be a gentleman. Of course, the officers and crew of the Royal Navy ship are all men. Let's move on. You are 19 years old now. When did you first go to sea as a midshipman? I'm going to say 13. 13 is about the average age for a new midshipman. We'll need to know your surname. I'll be Smith. Very respectable name in light of your class course. What about your given name? I'm going to pick Edward. Excellent. As the game begins, your officer may be described as follows. Mr. Midshipman Edward Smith, age 19, sailing 52%, gunnery 71%, leadership 64, fighting 70, patronage 30, tact 29, likability 30, honor 45, courage 50, bloodthirst 57, intelligence 73, wealth 10%. Some good and some bad. With that out of the way, let's get back to the battle. You've dealt with the injured in a fashion. I need to keep firing your guns, but in the midst of all the excitement, what's the next step? Swab the bore. You shout. The men under your command lift the sponge plunger and mash it in the gun's muzzle to extinguish any stray sparks that might cause the powder to ignite prematurely. Your gun crew quickly rams in the powder, places the wadding on the powder, loads a shot, and runs out the gun. You give the word, and the senior rating touches the fuse to the touch hole. You flinch unconsciously against the expected explosion, but nothing happens. You wait a moment and realize what happened. The powder was already in the bore when you swabbed it out. Because the powder got wet, the gun could not fire. It's embarrassing, but you could have been much, much worse. You give orders for your men to insert the screw and to clear the load from the gun manually, and after a delay of a few minutes, you're able to return the gun to service. The lieutenant commanding the broadside noticed, however, and your patronage suffered slightly. Great, we already fucked up. The battle rages on, but finally the Gaulish ship hauls down its colors and surrenders. In the aftermath of the battle, a young midshipman runs up to you. Captain's compliments, sir. He asks you to report to the quarterdeck. When you get to the quarterdeck, the captain looks over you. Mr. Smith, I'm rating you as an acting lieutenant. Take a section of 20 men across the prize and assume command. Make any necessary repairs and set sail for any Albionish port. Aye, sir. Thank you, sir. You quickly gather your men and head across on your first command. As you prepare to leave Courageous, you run into Mr. Bryce, second lieutenant. Well, acting Lieutenant Smith, he says, grinning widely and slapping you on the back. I know you'll do smashingly with your first command. I have the utmost confidence in you. Thank you, sir, you reply, touching your hat in salute. Just at that moment, First Lieutenant Piggott rounds the corner. Mr. Smith, you remark somewhat stiffly, fine piece of luck you've had. Piggott, with over 25 years' experience, is by far the most senior lieutenant on board, perhaps in the whole fleet. But it's not to his credit. He's too incompetent to earn a promotion to commander. He's watched countless younger, more competent lieutenants pass him by, while he racks up years of valuable experience. All he has to show for it is the power to boss the other lieutenants around imperiously, and he rarely misses an opportunity. Luck has not a bit to do with it, I say, Bryce counters cheerfully. Well, go on then, don't keep the prize waiting. Aye, sir. You make your way across to the prize ship with your detachment of 20 men. You are the only officer, but you have Jones, a master's mate, and with you as your second in command. The Gaulish ship is a 36-gun frigate, a square-rigged, three-masted ship with an ordinary crew complement of some 250 men. Your detachment of 20 will be sufficient to sail the prize, of course. Warships carry much larger crews than similarly-sized merchant ships because of the need to staff the broadsides, as well as to have men available for detached duties such as prize crews. And, of course, the larger crew size allows for a substantial number of casualties before the ship is incapacitated. The long and short of it is that you can fairly easily sail the frigate, but your prisoners outnumber you roughly 10 to 1, even taking into account the substantial losses they took before striking their colors. As you arrive, you quickly send some of your men to bring the prisoners below and lock them in the hold, where they will spend the rest of the voyage. A Gaulish officer, no more than a few years older than yourself, approaches you and offers his sword in surrender. He addresses you in Gaulish. You always learned quickly and you picked up at least a smattering of Gaulish. You may not understand everything he says, but your accent is assuredly abominable, but you are fully capable of making yourself understood. I believe you are the officer of the prize party, sir, he says. You deign to respond to him in Gaulish. Um, let's see. What do we do? Do we speak to him in Gaulish or not? I'm going to say yes. I am Acting Lieutenant Edward Smith of HMS Courageous. I am Lieutenant Villanueva of the Gaulish Republican Navy. During the battle, the more senior lieutenants were all killed, and the captain suffered a wound that incapacitated him shortly after we struck our colors. I am now the senior active officer of the ship. I understand, sir, you reply. You understand that we now command this prize. He nods. Alas, I do. I offer you my parole, sir. With that, Villanueva has promised not to seek to escape and not to interfere in your efforts to steer the ship. Do you accept his parole? I'm gonna say yes, but I'm keeping his sword. I accept your parole. Please attend carefully to any instructions the crew gives you, and you will of course need to return to the hold at any time that I request. I understand, sir. Thank you. His expression looks a little sour as he glances at his sword still in your hands. Jones approaches you a short while later. So that's it then, sir? Bloody Gallspin's always trying to kill us. Does kill a lot of good men, and then after the battle it's all nicey-nicey. His lot murdered Davies, but we're supposed to not care after the battle is over. Explain yourself. Tell him to drop it. Or have him flogged. How about just tell him to drop it? It's enough, Jones. I believe you have other duties to attend to. Aye, sir, responds Jones sullenly. He stomps off to return to work. That was probably the best response, but the anger on Jones's face is troubling. This may lead to problems later. You'll have to keep an eye on him. A few days later, Lieutenant Villanueva comes to you with a question. Sir, he inquires, may we have access to some additional medical supplies? A member of our crew has suffered a compound fracture. Without further attention, he may die. Sure, we'll let him have medical supplies. The next several days pass smoothly. You get used to the routine of the passing watches, even with the new experience of commanding the prize ship. The process of trimming the sails, taking your bearings, and setting the course is nerve-wracking. Never before have your decisions been the final word, leading a ship either on a safe and direct course to your destination or towards disaster. But the weather is blessedly easy, with a steady breeze, but clear skies, and you go through the process relying on your training and your experience. On the 5th day, Jones comes to you with a disturbing piece of news. I found something below deck that I need to bring to your attention, sir. What is it, Jones? We're taking water in the hold. We'd missed the hole at first because it's beneath the waterline. Sure enough, he's right. You order your crew to start pumping out the water. With Jones' help, you managed to patch the hole in time to prevent any further damage to the ship. Why do you think Jones pointed out the damage to you? Out of duty to get on my good side to save his own neck. Out of his duty. On the 6th day, one of your men calls down to the deck. Sail to lee. What sort of ship is it? You call back as you search with your spyglass. After a minute, the sailor calls back. She looks to be a Gaulish sloop of war, sir. A sloop of war that presents you with a difficult choice. A sloop carries no more than 20 guns, often fewer. What's more, a sloop's guns will be of lighter weight than those of a frigate. If you had a full crew, you could easily capture her. But with only a prize crew at your disposal, the sloop would have a much greater rate of fire and substantially larger number of men. How do you want to handle this? I'm going to say avoid the enemy. It takes some careful sailing, but you escape from the Gaulish sloop. When you sail into Chesterport a few days later, you feel an enormous sense of relief to be under the protection of the harbor's mighty guns. The captain that commands the port commends you for avoiding capture by the Gaulish sloop. A few months later, HMS Courageous returns to port and you rejoin her company. You take up your duties as an acting lieutenant with the added confidence from the successful command of a prize ship, not to mention a few pounds of spending money from the value of the prize. A midshipman's share isn't much, but it's still enough to earn you a small amount. I would say we're doing pretty good so far. I take up your new duties as an acting lieutenant on HMS Courageous. Responsibilities are much greater and your duties have changed significantly. Where previously you were often on deck as an assistant for the officer of the watch, you now take your turns as an officer of the watch. Where you previously commanded a small group of guns, you now command a broadside. And your duties studying under the ship's master have completely ended. As a year passes, you have the opportunity to practice various skills. Which of your skills do you devote the most to training? Leading. An excellent choice. Cool. Finally, it's time for your lieutenant exam. You dress in your finest uniform, head over to a ship of the line, HMS Dreadnought, where a board of captains has convened to examine a plethora of acting lieutenants and midshipmen on the finer points of naval skill. Those who pass are promoted to lieutenant. Those who fail must spend at least another year at sea before trying again. After an interminable wait, your name is called and you present yourself to the trio of captains. They take a perfunctory look at your papers and then launch into examination. Captain Fitzroy, a middle-aged captain with a particularly hard cast to his face, begins questioning you on gunnery. How many ounces of powder should be loaded into a long 8? You stammer for a while before one of the other captains cuts in and gives you the correct answer. Then he launches into another question that you stumble through. After 10 minutes of agony, the captains confer privately and then inform you that you have failed the exam. With a bitter heart, you return to HMS Courageous as a midshipman. If you had a little more patronage, you would have passed. Even worse than resuming the duties and status of midshipman is the loss of seniority that you accrued as an acting lieutenant. Now when you finally become a lieutenant, you will be much more junior than you would have been otherwise. 5 years pass before you finally pass a subsequent examination. Alright, well that sucks. That sucked. 10 minutes before 8 bells, sir, the quartermaster reports. A steady breeze pulls your ship inevitably west, bound for Kingsport. Very good, you say. Pipe the watch below. The first lieutenant, Mr. Pigott, arrives promptly to relieve you of your dog watch. I relieve you, Mr. Smith. Aye, sir. I stand relieved. Good night, sir. Good night, Mr. Smith. Not long after, you find yourself lying in your cot, drifting off to sleep. Soon you begin to dream. You find yourself sitting for your lieutenant's exam, 3 gigantic captains looking down at you with terrible grins, larger than life. Good day, Mr. Smith. The first question to you is as follows. You are in temporary command of a 36-gun ship returning to Albion, maximum haste. The wind is with you. You are at full sail. The barometer reports a sudden drop in pressure. What do you do next? Admit that I don't know. Failing the exam already, Smith? An officer would know that a sudden drop in pressure indicates the arrival of a major storm. By the time you'd reach the sails, you'd probably lose a mast. Here's your next question, the second captain says. You are in temporary command of a 36-gun ship returning to Albion with maximum haste. The wind is with you. You are at full sail. The barometer reports a sudden drop in pressure. What do you do next? That's the same question. Strong wind is coming. Let out more sail. Cut holes in the sail to maintain speed. We're about to be calmed. Prepare oars for rowing. Or are they all incorrect? I'm going to say they're all incorrect. No, I guess not. Captain shriek with laughter, chilling your bones. Even the most novice seaman would know that a drop in barometric pressure means an oncoming squall. You should have chosen to furl the sail. This is your final question. You're in temporary command of a 36-gun ship returning to Albion with maximum haste. The wind is with you. You are at full sail. The barometer reports a sudden drop in pressure. What do you do next? The storm is coming. Furl the sail to avoid disaster. You have officially failed the lieutenant examination. This is the worst performance I've ever seen in an acting lieutenant. Furthermore, it is the unanimous agreement of the examination board that you shall be disrated and pass into service as an ordinary sailor. Good day, Mr. Smith. You wake with a start. Drowsily, you hear Pigott call the watch. It's midnight. The ship is heaving erratically. As you yawn deeply, your ears pop. The pressure has changed. Go above deck. By the time you get yourself dressed and on deck, you find that things are already going to hell. Last night's steady breeze has become a gale. You feel the mist of rain on your cheek. Mr. Smith, says Pigott, greeting you formally. It's hard to see clearly, but you think you can spy Jones up in the riggings, along with 2 other men. Tell him to furl the sail, politely bring up the weather, and ask what he suggests. Go back to bed. I guess tell him to furl the sail. You can't just tell Pigott what to do. He's your commanding officer. You came all the way up here to tell me that? I've already got the men furling the sail. What do you take me for? Just at the moment, Captain Kent appears from his cabin. Captain on deck. Just then Jones falls from the riggings of the mizzen mast. Another sailor reaches out to catch him. The wind shrieks, and the ship groans and leans precipitously. You hear a pop as someone's arm dislocates. Before anyone can say a word, both sailors have fallen to the deck, one of them killed instantly on impact. The captain takes over from here. After breakfast, all the officers of the ship gather together in the captain's cabin. Piglet takes a moment to turn to you and hiss, "What were you trying to do last night? Make it seem to everyone that I don't know my job. You'll pay for your insolence." You have no opportunity to defend yourself before the captain calls for everyone's attention. "My question for you, Mr. Piglet," the captain says, "is why were there still men on the riggings when the storm arrived? I could see from the deck that Master Mates Jones hadn't reefed the sail correctly, so I ordered the men to return aloft and secure it properly. Jones says that you gave the order to reef the sail too late, that he and Wilson were already under heavy weather. With all due respect, sir, Jones is an insubordinate and unskilled master's mate. I'm not surprised he has invented an excuse. I gave the order when it was needed." I'm gonna stay out of it. Piglet continues, caught up in his own blustering. "I gave the order the moment the wind picked up and the rain set in." "And not when the barometric pressure dropped?" asked the captain. There is brief silence as everyone in the room realizes that Piglet has just admitted to a serious blunder. He turns red with rage and embarrassment. "I gave the order at the right time," he insists, banging his fists on the table. "I demand that Jones be flogged for his error reefing the sails. I'm sure he did the best he could under the circumstances, but his best was simply not good enough, and now 2 men are dead." The captain is silent for a moment and says, "Mr. Piglet, I will not mention you by name in my report on this to the Admiralty, but I will remember this as I prepare future reports. As for Jones, the boatswain will administer 20 lashes under Mr. Piglet's supervision." Bryce pipes up. "Jones is still under the care of Dr. Miller. Very well. His punishment will be postponed until such time as Dr. Miller agrees to allow it. You are dismissed." Once you're both out of earshot, Piglet leans in to whisper you, "Mark my words, Smith, your career in the Navy is well and truly finished." As soon as he's able to walk, Jones is laid out for 20 lashes. Piglet has the boatswain beat him as hard as he can. He's immediately returned to the surgeon's care. Later that night, the midshipman wakes you from a very deep sleep. "Mr. Piglet's compliments, sir, and he's passing the word for you. Because he is a senior to you, you have no choice but to report when he sends for you. You stagger out of bed, quickly pull on your uniform, and make your way to the deck, where Mr. Piglet awaits you with a nasty smile. "Mr. Smith, did the weather change at all during your report? During your watch, I mean?" "Yes, sir," you replied as clearly as you were able. "The wind changed twice during the evening. At the end of my watch, the wind was favorable." "Very well, you are dismissed." What an odd question. Couldn't you have gathered this information from the log? You find that you're a bit tired the following day. You find it difficult to avoid yawning disrespectfully, but you're in the Royal Navy. You can manage it. But 2 days later, Piglet wakes you up again in the middle of your sleep cycle. "How many times did you throw the ship log to measure speed?" "Did you throw the chip log to measure speed?" 3 times, sir." Useless. "Come again, Mr. Smith?" "I said 3 times." "I see, Mr. Smith. In my opinion, you appear to be inebriated with rum." "Sir, no, sir. It's almost 3 bells. You're exhausted, but you're not drunk." "Well, I'll see to it that this won't happen again. You're not to have another drop of rum until my order. Is that clear?" "Aye, sir." "You're dismissed, Mr. Smith." Piglet wakes you again 3 days later to ask whether the captain gave you any standing orders that he should be aware of as next watch standing officer, and again 2 days after that. Mr. Piglet wakes you at least once every 2 or 3 days for the next 3 weeks. Sometimes he takes an opportunity to lecture for an hour on the importance of respect and good discipline on the ship. He's doing everything in his authority to make your life hell. The following evening, you catch yourself nearly falling asleep on duty, an offense punishable by death. I'm just going to say tough it out. The next night, Piglet wakes you again at 3 bells. The following afternoon, you catch yourself dozing during duty. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds. No one appears to have noticed this time. As you head below deck, you see a handful of sailors whispering together. As soon as they catch sight of you, they stop abruptly and go their separate ways. What do you think they're whispering about? I'm going to say harmless gossip. What do you plan to do about it? I'm going to do nothing. I suppose a few sailors gossiping is nothing to worry about. A few days later, another major storm hits. At almost 4 bells, you find yourself wide awake, entirely against your will. Unable to return to sleep, you pull on your uniform and go above deck for some fresh air. On deck, you encounter a most unusual sight. The sky is pouring icy rain. Mr. Piglet is wrestling with 2 sailors on the edge of the deck. They are trying to push him overboard. They are trying to murder him. Another sailor is on deck, watching the fight but not involved. You're pretty sure he hasn't noticed you yet. I'm going to go back to sleep. That's none of my business. In a tragic accident, Piglet falls overboard, lost at sea. How do you feel about his death? Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Bryce, now the first lieutenant, asks you privately, do you really think it was an accident? Yeah, it was an accident. I suppose you're right. Life aboard Courageous slowly returns to normal, running much more smoothly under Bryce's hand than under Piglet's. Months pass. I mean, yeah. The tropical sun is hot even through your hat, and it glares painfully off the water. Through your stinging eyes, you can see looming up ahead the cliffs of a little island, a tiny place uninhabited according to the charts. About halfway between the prow of Courageous and the island, the sea is marked by the white canvas sail of a Gaulish merchant ship, streaking towards the island as fast as she can go, running desperately away from Courageous's pursuit. More sail, the captain commands. Immediately the men jump to obey, feet pounding on the deck, and shouts echoing from the rigging. Canvas snaps and billows overheard. But you can tell it isn't enough. The little gullish ship is faster under the light wind and has too great a head start. I do not think we can catch her, you say quickly. We must catch her before she gets much nearer shore. We can't maneuver courageous in those shallow waters. And indeed, before very long, the captain is forced to call off pursuit, citing just that reason. The courageous stays a safe distance out in deep water. You and many others stare resentfully at the escaped prize, nestled against the shore in the company of another gullish merchant ship, one that wasn't already there. The gulls must use this island often for a resupply. Bryce Smith, the captain's voice cuts through reverie. In my cabin, if you please. We can hold them pinned here indefinitely, but we can't get close enough to engage them directly, which means a cutting-out expedition is called for. A group of men will be sent to approach the merchant ships in the dead of night, board them secretly, take them over, and sail them away from the island as prizes. There are 2 ships, so our force will be divided in 2. Mr. Bryce, you will command one half, Mr. Smith the other. Expect that each enemy ship has a complement of 30 men. You will each have 40 under your command. Few times get such a chance to prove their capabilities. If you are able to pull this off, it will be a significant boost to your career. How are you feeling about this? Thrilled, determined, terrified. I'm going to say thrilled. That's the spirit. You give serious thought to how you will organize your men, and then you go to brief the ones who've been assigned to you. They consist of 2 midshipmen and 40 sailors. We will take 2 boats, you explain. I shall command 1. With Mr. Midshipman Stewart to assist me, Mr. Midshipman Mason will command the other. My boat shall come along the starboard side of the gullish vessel, and Mr. Midshipman Mason's along the port side. We will climb aboard secretly and then attack from 2 sides with plenty of shouting to frighten the spineless gullish boys. The men grin. You pause. You know that one of the 3 officers is made responsible for cutting the anchor cable so that your men will be able to sail the gullish ship out to where HMS Courageous waits. Another must be responsible for ascending the rigging and loosing the topsail to get the ship underway, and a third must be responsible for taking over steering the ship. There are 3 officers available, you and 2 midshipmen. Which job do you want for yourself? Cutting the cable. Let's see. Do we do the cutting the cable because it's the most important job? Or do we steer the ship because you're in command and that's what an officer would do? I kind of want to cut the cable. Once we are aboard, I shall cut the anchor cable to release the gullish ship from its mooring. Mr. Midshipman Mason, you shall send the rigging, loose the topsail, set the ship in motion. He pales slightly but nods. Mr. Midshipman Stewart, it shall be your task to make your way directly to the wheel and steer the prize out of harbor once we've taken her. Aye, aye, sir. Now you men, you'll each be provided with a pistol and a cutlass. We will leave at 4 bells, you will be roused. Before dismissing them, you think over the plan. Is there anything else you need to say? Ah, yes, of course, you nearly forgot. Mind you keep those pistols at half cock until I give the order otherwise. We don't want there any risk of a shot going off before we're aboard. Dismissed. The next few hours pass nervously as you go over your plan again and again. Finally, the 4 bells sounds, and you hasten to the deck to take command of your party. Along the way, you encounter Bryce, who seems a little nervous, too. All in readiness, Mr. Smith? Yes, sir, Mr. Bryce. You set someone to climb the rigging and lose the topsail, right? And someone to cut the cable? Yes, sir. And there's an officer responsible for the steering? Yes, sir. You've told the men to keep their damned pistols half-cocked until you give the word. All we need is a premature shot to give away the game. Yes, sir, I've told them. Nicely done, Mr. Smith. You seem to have thought of everything. Your half of the mission is in good hands. Bryce smiles, looking only a little strained. Good luck to you. You too, sir, you say, and you go to shepherd your men into the boats. The oars skim smoothly over the water, and the men obediently keep quiet. You can feel your heart hammer in your throat as the great dark shapes of the gullish ships loom overhead. You hope your hand doesn't shake on the tiller. It's your responsibility to get the boat close enough to board the merchant vessel without letting their lookout see anything. You hope your sailing ability is up to the task. Oh. Okay. Oops. I think that's where I'm gonna stop for now. Yeah. So next time we will see what happens with our capturing of the Gaulish ships. Okay, goodbye.